What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for Jimmy Smith and Ryan Moody, our MMA show. We are about as close to live as we can get with YouTube. The Trailblazers and Lakers going off in just a matter of seconds. And I can't help but notice, I don't know if you've seen this, Jimmy, the outpouring of fan support for Kobe Bryant is an incredible thing to watch. I feel like it's one of those things that if you don't watch it tonight, I don't know if you're ever going to see somebody get so celebrated in sport after their very, very unfortunate passing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. And, I've been on Luke Thomas' show all week, and we've been talking around a lot, and a lot of fans have shown their grief about the situation. And that unifying power, man, that means a lot.
Yeah, I think the best part about tonight is I think it probably symbolizes for a lot of fans the start of a healing process that may never end for some. But people got upset that we talked about Kobe so much last time. I don't understand why.
Yeah, I mean it's man. I was trying to think of the last time a sports icon like this died young and tragically, and it's hard to think of one that was like Kobe, to go the way he went at the age he went and the circumstances and everything. It's a tough one, but it's one of the interesting things is the Boston Celtics really paid him a tribute. And I remember them chanting "Beat LA," and it was the biggest rivalry ever, but they respected Kobe and they still do.
Yeah, it's definitely, a lot of times I think for me, when you look back at the year in review, the memorials where, sometimes I hate to put it this way, but you look at them and you go, oh, I forgot so-and-so died. I don't think at the end of the year, there's going to be one person that looks at those and says, oh yeah, I forgot Kobe died. I think it's going to be one that sticks with us.
Yeah, no, you're going to know where you were when you found out. That's one of those things. I really believe that.
All right. So these are rough transitions. We got to stop transitioning this way. You will know, well, you probably won't know where you were. Today, we learned a lot. Dana White comes out and basically says, hey, listen, this Kamaru and Jorge Masvidal fight is going to happen. Now, there's some people that are upset, but look, the way I think this through, Kamaru still has a hand injury, right? We know that. The pay-per-views are set pretty much until April. I'm going to hope, if you listen to our last show, Jimmy's going to hope too, that May we get to see Stipe DC. So wasn't June like the earliest this could have happened to begin with? It was going to be on pay-per-view. And we know, Jimmy, this is a Stephen A. Smith card, is it not? This is going to be a big fight.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. It's going to be absolutely huge. And their confrontation, a lot of people are questioning its legitimacy and validity, whatever. Masvidal super hot right now. Kamaru Usman coming off the knockout win over Colby Covington. I think he's looking better and better. Interesting stylistic choice in terms of fights. I don't know if it's the most appealing style for Jorge Masvidal to take on. His reach might exceed his grasp in this one, but I think it's the highest he could shoot without a fight with Conor McGregor. I think that was the biggest. I think when that didn't work out, this might have been second.
Yeah, and that it's so interesting you said the name there, because I immediately thought this was going to really help push the Justin Gaethje-Conor McGregor fight. If Conor really wants to be active, right, I feel like this is a huge step in that direction.
Yeah, because it limits his options pretty much. Without Jorge Masvidal, who I think made the most sense after the Cowboy win, was the Masvidal fight. It pretty much, if he wants to stay busy, it's the Diaz trilogy. It's Justin Gaethje, maybe a rematch with Dustin Poirier, although I think that would be kind of a step back for him. And that's it without Khabib. Now, Khabib has a fight coming. There's Ramadan. So Dana White said today that, they're looking at Khabib in the fall, but they don't know if he wants to fight somebody else before then. If he does, I think it's pretty much Nate, Gaethje, and maybe an outside chance at Poirier. That's about it. There just aren't a lot of options.
Let me ask you, I've seen a lot of feedback from people that talk about, Kamaru's a better athlete than Jorge. He beat Colby and Woodley, which are the elite at welterweight. And they pretend that Jorge is this big step down in competition. And, I'm not really sold on that. I actually think from a ground game perspective, I actually think Jorge may be better grappling, not wrestling. Wrestling is certainly Kamaru. But I think striking actually favors Jorge a little bit. And I think, like you mentioned, there's a lot of interesting things here. We've seen Jorge do what he can do against a wrestler like Ben Askren. But listen, Ben Askren is no Kamaru Usman. We've seen what Kamaru can do against some strikers, but this is really an interesting matchup because of the highlights that we've seen when they face fighters of that specific genre.
Yeah, it's what's interesting about this is a lot of people said, well, you think he can't beat Kamaru Usman? Look what he did to Ben Askren. Ben Askren dives from the outside. He always has. In his wrestling career, in his MMA career, he's an outside takedown guy. Kamaru Usman isn't. He tends to like short-range takedowns. He tends to clinch a lot. He tends to smother you a little bit. He's a big welterweight, very, very strong. Both fighters have their advantages in this. What I think Masvidal is going to have trouble with in this fight is finding that medium range where he's so effective and he's so quick with the hands and such crisp, sharp combinations. I don't see Kamaru Usman staying in that range very often. I think it's going to be more of a pressure fight on Kamaru Usman's side, mix in the wrestling, mix in his own, I think, really good medium range punching game. And it's a tough puzzle for Masvidal. Masvidal, there are so many strikers at 55 and 70 that you could have that scintillating highlight reel kind of fight. I don't see this as that kind of fight. I think I see it as Kamaru Usman trying to impose his game on Masvidal and Masvidal trying to find the space to land the kind of strikes that he's so good with. And I think that's the chess match of this one.
God, I was hoping you'd go another way because I see it very similar. I hate to say it so early, but I see this kind of being, kind of a boring fight. First of all,
if Usman has his way, for sure. Yeah. Not in a negative way, but if he can control the pacing, yeah, it's going to be that controlled kind of slowed down kind of fight because a fast dynamic fight, that's Jorge Masvidal.
Right. And you're not going to have, first of all, Kamaru is not going to shoot from 30 feet away for a double leg. It ain't going to happen. But you also know that Kamaru can't stand in front of stand in front of Jorge like he did with Colby. So I actually, in a lot of the ways you say, think that Kamaru is going to lean on that wrestling. He's going to lean on that kind of cage work, where he clinches you up against the cage and limits your escape opportunities. And I know those are kind of stale fights to watch, but that's his best bet to beat Jorge Masvidal. And for Jorge, listen, you're going to have to work on your takedown defense. You're going to work on getting up. When you are smothered to a degree, you're going to have to learn a lot of intricacies in a short period of time that I'm not saying he doesn't have, but we haven't seen it consistently. The highlight knockout of Ben Askren is not going to happen against Kamaru Usman. It's just not there. It's like you said, they're both wrestlers, and a lot of people both think that all wrestlers are wrestlers, but there's different degrees of how much someone relies on their wrestling to win, and Kamaru doesn't have to rely on his wrestling anywhere near the way Ben Askren would. The way, since we mentioned, a guy like Justin Gaethje, he doesn't have to rely on his wrestling at all to win. So I really thought that people bringing that up was so interesting that they really felt like, this was going to go that kind of way. But it is really, a personality clash too. Like you said, these are two guys that are both vocal when they need to be. I side with what you said earlier. The whole Super Bowl show, it just seems so staged. It just seems so, Kamaru's in a cast. What are you really doing? You know what I mean? It seemed like it was, the old memo came down from Dana. Make sure you have a little dust up because we got to bring some attention to this. And that's the best these two came up with.
I understand people thinking that. And I don't know if you're right or wrong. Obviously, I don't know what's in these guys' heads. I don't know if it was staged in the sense of, hey, let's meet up at this time and do this thing. Radio Row in Miami for the Super Bowl, a ton of press around, everybody had a camera, and you see the other guy? Oh, I'm sure there was like a, hey, let's might as well blow this up. Was it planned beforehand and staged that well? Maybe not, but it was certainly played up by both parties. Like, okay, God, we got all this media here. Like, we can't just walk by one another. We got to do something, and they did. So it's just one of those things where they just happen to go off at one another right at Radio Row where there's a ton of press around. Yeah, I mean, these guys aren't stupid. They know what sells fights, and they took the opportunity, and I'm not even mad at them for it. at all. But as you said, his cast, what's he really going to do? Hit him over the head with it? Are you going to get in a street fight right there for no money and screw up a huge payday? No. It's just so ridiculous to even engage in something like that. It's strictly to build buzz. You don't really go, boy, if people weren't there, they would have fought. No, they wouldn't have, because they don't want to spoil their payday. So that would have been stupid. So they played it up. It got a ton of press, and now they're fighting one another. So all in all, it's positive for everybody involved.
Call me a simpleton, Jimmy. I miss the old days where rivalries were built with Ultimate Team coaches and DC and John Jones going through a small rickety stage. That's what I want. I don't need
they destroyed, that they knocked down, pushing each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Do I really need two guys having a minor shouting match and one making a gun out of his hand? I don't know. It just seemed a little bit weird. But you know what? I guess if nothing else, we can't debate that it works, right? We know what happened. I do think the MMA community was absolutely gold. I forget who it was that actually originally tweeted it. And he said something to the effect, I'll paraphrase, of two people who I were told were important UFC fighters got into an argument, and I'm posting this clip. And people literally were like, how can you be in media and not know who they are? Like, do we really think the UFC is that important that every media person knows, every top 5 fighter? Probably not.
Right. They would. I mean, are you a hockey fan?
No.
Yeah. If whoever was the MVP of the NHL finals last year, I wouldn't know that person. I know hockey exists. I know the teams. I know who Wayne Gretzky is. That's about it. And that's a pretty major sport. I wouldn't recognize him. There are a lot of top baseball players that I wouldn't know by sight. You know what I mean? Like, unless it's a Dodger, a Clayton Kershaw, something like that I've watched play, like, I wouldn't necessarily know, so I don't disparage a media member for not knowing who that is. Not knowing what the UFC is at all. All right. That's unheard of today. But yeah, not knowing who a top fighter is, plenty of sports you wouldn't recognize necessarily the top athlete.
Yeah. Even in a media sense like that, I can give somebody a pass. Like, listen, UFC is a high level sport, but we're not, world renowned to the point of our fighters can't walk down the street and not be recognized. I think for that matter, you could probably throw, you could probably throw 80% of the boxers out right now active in a room, and people wouldn't be able to tell you who they were.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, unless you're Canelo, unless Triple G, somebody really big, Floyd Mayweather, okay, those people. But yeah, I completely agree with you. We're still something of a niche sport, although we're getting bigger.
We're trying. And things like this help. When you can have little dust-ups on Radio Row, you're kind of working your way up there. But overall, I guess just to close things out here, as a fan, Jimmy Smith, you are not upset with the timing of this fight. You're not upset with the release of this fight. You're not upset that it's not Conor right away. You don't have anything that jumps out at you that just got you mad about this? Because I feel like there's some people that are going to be like, yeah, you guys were supposed to be bent out of shape about this. There was a whole bunch of things wrong here, and you didn't pick up on any of them.
There are things, but the things that are wrong, air quotes, are there more deserving 170-pounders right now? It's kind of in flux, and he's done a good job taking out, I think, the top 2 contenders, Tyron Woodley and Colby Covington. I think he did a good job with that. I think Masvidal earned it with the flying knee over Ben Askren and the win over Darren Till more than the Nate Diaz fight. But this is a guy who has shown he can compete at 170 pounds. And I think right now it's not a bad fight to make. The only thing wrong, if you want to say wrong, is it might not be the best style matchup right now for Masvidal. And that remains to be seen. Maybe he does an amazing job and gets another highlight reel knockout. But the only thing is that there are sexier matchups. Conor McGregor, for example, but more striking-based guys where Masvidal could have a more entertaining fight. This might be a conservative fight by Usman. That's the only thing really wrong, if you want to use that word, with this selection, and it might lead to a more conservative fight.
I would also argue that maybe you took, in Jorge, the big name right now from the casual perspective, the BMF belt, those things, and you kind of thrust him into that championship role, which, before he was building a resume there. But I think, listen, when we're talking about a guy that for a lot of people just became, fighter of the year, this time last year, his name wasn't constantly being brought up in the title fight. But as you said, whether it's impressive performances or big wins, he still checked the boxes to get to where he is. I'm not overly upset about it.
Yeah, he did earn it. I really do believe that he did earn it.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of not jumping in line, and I'm not going to sit here and say that Jorge jumped in line.
Yeah, I don't think he did. And the funny part to me is he kind of got the most attention for the fight that meant the least. Meaning, the Nate Diaz fight was a big deal, a big pay-per-view, the BMF belt and all these things. I think the two fights before that, Darren Till and Ben Askren, were more impressive. I think the Darren Till fight was probably the most impressive. So, it's kind of like his credentials in the weight class come from the fight that wasn't as big in the eyes of most casual fans.
Yeah, we've had that discussion before, and I agree with you then. I will agree with you now. And with that said, if you guys disagree with us, let us know in the comment section. We teased a couple shows ago, and I think we will be able to confidently say the end of next week, we have a little bit of news for you guys that have been patiently listening and continually following and listening to us. We certainly appreciate you, and we will be back in the week with more commentary.